Shalom. So, today we're going to begin a study in the book of Judges, but not just in the book of Judges, Shoftim, Judges. It was laid on my heart. Someone suggested that I ask the young women of the congregation here, the young ladies, to pick a book that I should teach on when we finish the Ezekiel teaching we finished last week. And the book that was picked, I think was a little ironic for young ladies to pick it, but I'm impressed they picked the book of Shoftim or Judges. Not usually something young girls want to study on. Military leaders of Israel. But as I was preparing to study on it, something was laid on my heart and then confirmed. I had a confirmation through some archaeological studies that were done that I learned about that Shoftim was more than likely written by Samuel to set a backdrop for the book of Ruth, which is actually kind of a prequel to his own book of Shemuel, which tells the stories of the kings of ancient Israel. I have this vision going forward today, that we will spend the next 2.5 years studying what he sees as right leadership, what he sees as authority used properly. And in the process, we're going to study authority used improperly. We're going to see the blessings of acting under his authority, when in authority, and the cursings of acting outside of his authority, when in authority over others. And so we're going to do that beginning with the book of Shoftim. After the death of Yehoshua, the people of Israel asked Yehovah, who will go up for us first to fight against the Canaanite? I read that, and it occurred to me. They had Moshe to lead them through the wilderness. They had Yehoshua to lead their early military campaigns in the land. But they weren't just leaders for the journey. They weren't wilderness survival features and military leaders. Moshe and Yehoshua were spiritual leaders. Okay? And I think that's very important. If you take into account here, what did the people ask? They've had two great leaders working under Yehovah for direction for many, many years. Well over half a century. Generations have been born and died under those two leaders. And yet the people of Israel said, who will go up for us first to fight against the Canaanite? I guess the people of Canaan. Do we see something missing there? They're saying, who's going to take up a physical sword and go up and slay these enemies when they just spent more than half a century under the leadership of men who took up the spiritual sword, so that if it's done correctly, there's very little, if any, need for the physical sword. And what have the children of Israel learned? Ben Yisrael had learned nothing. Or their question would have been, who is going to go up for us and appear before you in the Holy of Holies? That should have been their first question. Because if leadership is being done right, beginning at the Holy of Holies, then they wouldn't need to know who's going to be their generals, who's going to be the captains and lieutenants of the army. That would have been handled for them if they were handling the Holy of Holies correctly. But that's not what was asked. Yehovah said, Yehuda will go up here. I have handed the land over to him. Yehuda said to his brother Shimon, come up with me into my assigned territory that we can fight against the Canaanites, and I likewise will go with you into your territory. Just to clarify, this is not two men, Yehuda and Shimon. These are the tribal leaders of the tribe of Yehuda and the tribe of Shimon. Okay? Sometimes the English text will translate and give you that information. In the true Hebrew, it literally has to be, you have to read the context and understand the contract of mutual aid that's being set up here. So Shimon went with him. Yehuda went up, and Yehovah gave the Canaanite and the Perizzai into their hands. Of those in Bezek, they killed 10,000 men. They found Adonai Bezek in Bezek, and they fought against him. Literally, that's the Lord of Bezek. They killed the Canaanite, and the Perizzai, but Adonai Bezek fled. They pursued him, caught him, and cut off his thumbs and big toes. Now, that sounds pretty brutal, doesn't it? You chase your opponent down, you have him at the edge of the sword, and you cut off his thumbs and his big toes. Why? Adonai Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and their big toes cut off gathered food under my table. He's saying this is what he did to the kings that he put down. When he lorded over them, he didn't kill them. He cut off their thumbs and their big toes. He did it to 70 different kings in the area. And each in his own time sat like a beggar and took the food scraps off of the table of Adonai Bezek. Then he says, Elohim has paid me back in accordance with what I did. They brought him to Jerusalem and he died there. Okay? Think about this. This Canaanite king had done this horrific thing to other kings throughout his reign as a sign of his superiority. And without even knowing this, the army of Yehuda and Shimon came in, took over his kingdom, and the leaders chose to do to him exactly what he did to 70 kings before him. And he doesn't say, you've served me right, because Elohim has paid me back. Okay? Now that's an important thing to think about there, because just like when I said, they made a mistake not asking who's going to go up for us and minister in the Holy of Holies. Instead, they said who's going to go up for us and fight up here. Despite the fact that they were making mistakes in what they were doing, the Elohim of Abraham was still working through them. And he's trying to say to them, look here. I put it in your heart and in your mind to do to him what he did to these other kings so that justice would be served, because he is the Elohim of justice. Said, I put that in your mind, I put that in your heart, and he is giving glory to me for this brutal thing that you did. Why are you not caring about who's ministering to me in the Holy of Holies? Why are you worried about this? I will handle this. You go take care of worship. Then the people of Yehudah fought against Jerusalem, captured it, overpowered it with the sword, and set the city on fire. Afterwards, the people of Yehudah went down to fight against the Canaanites who lived in the hill country in the Negev. Remember the Negev? When we were in the Genesis study just earlier, we were talking about where Yitzhak was dwelling in the tent of Sarah when Rebekah was brought to him and said that he dwelt in the land of Negev. The region of Negev is in the same area. It says, and in the Shephelah, Yehudah also attacked the Canaanite living in Hebron. That's Hebron if you're reading in English. Formerly called Kiryat Arba. And they overpowered Shishai, Achiman, and Talmai. From there, they attacked the inhabitants of Debir. That later became a family name, Debir. Debir was formerly called Kiryat Sefer. Caleb said, or Caleb, I believe it is, Caleb said, to whomever overpowers Kiryat Sefer and captures it, I will give my daughter Achshah as his wife. Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, most English versions say his younger kinsman, literally it's his younger brother, captured it, so he gave him Achsah, his daughter, as his wife. Now, reads a whole lot different in the Hebrew, doesn't it? Because if you read the standard English translations, what you come up with was they were in the same tribe. Maybe they were in the same greater clan. He went up and he captured the city, and his reward was his niece. Okay? That seems kind of out there and taboo to us. Okay? There's like so many things that we are told are so terribly wrong today, and I'm not saying any man in this room should go try to marry his niece. Okay? I'm saying there's so many things that today we're told are the most awful things in the world that none of us in this room would be sitting here if somebody hadn't done those things. Okay, so before we go judging the decisions that were made by our patriarchs, we need to remember that without those decisions, we wouldn't be here. Without those decisions and the blessings that came upon those people who made those decisions, there would be no Hebrew nation. After becoming his wife, she persuaded him to ask her father to give them a field. When she got off her donkey, Caleb asked her, "What do you want?" She said to him, "Give me a blessing, since you gave me land in the Negev. Also give me sources of water." So Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. This becomes very important because going back to, is he just his kinsman or is he his younger brother? Okay? If he gave his daughter and her husband, who was just a distant kinsman, these properties, 7 years later, what happens to them? They come back to him. If he gives a portion of his possession to his younger brother, they don't ever have to come back to him because it's part of the same inheritance tract. That means that by rights, that land that was given in the Negev to Othniel should be his to this day. Next, the descendants of Kenai, Moshe's father-in-law, went up out of the city of date palms with the people of Yehudah into the Yehudah desert south of Arad, and they came and settled with the people. Okay? We're still looking at a mixed multitude. Okay? A lot of people look and say, well, at Mount Sinai, they all became part of, and they all say they all became Jewish. Okay? No, they all became part of Israel. But these were a part of Israel that were outside of the tribes. But think about that. Think about what that means today when we're dealing with so many people who are grafted in through faith, and they say, but I don't really have a place and an inheritance. And I tell you so often, I tell you, if you look at the law of Ezra and the law of the Ger, and it says that they can have a portion among the tribes, and that gets ignored. Here's a perfect example. Moshe's father-in-law had descendants who lived among the tribes, who lived and worshiped side by side, and who were willing to go up into the land and conquer it with them. And so they were given a place to live among Yehudah, which was not even Moshe's tribe. Yehudah went to Shimon, his brother. Shimon, his brother. They overpowered the Canaanites who inhabited the spot and completely destroyed it. The name of the city was called Hormah. Yehudah also took Azza with its territory, Ashkelon with its territory, and Ekron with its territory. Yehovah was with Yehudah, and they took possession of the hill country because they could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley since they had iron chariots. They gave Hebron to Caleb, as Moshe had said to do, and he drove out from there the three sons of Anak. Later on we'll talk about the Anakim. The people of Binyamin did not drive out the Yebusi who inhabited Jerusalem. Rather, the Yebusi continued living with the people of Binyamin in Jerusalem as they do to this day. We talk about Jerusalem today being an occupied city. And we talk about how it's supposed to belong to the people of Israel for eternity. And how dare those Palestinians want to live there. Now, I'm not saying that it's right that it be a divided city and that the Jewish people, the Israelis, are not allowed to go into certain parts of the city without being harmed or what have you. I'm not saying that. But we were given an instruction to drive out anyone who was not Israel. And they didn't do it. We were given an opportunity to do it at that time. And that was the only time that we were promised that we would be able to drive them out of the city. But they chose not to. For whatever reason, the people of Binyamin did not drive out the Yebusi. And at the time of Shemuel, they still were living in the city with the children of Israel. The house of Yosef likewise attacked Beit El, and Yehovah was with them. Beit Yosef sent spies to Beit El. The city was formerly called Luz. Now, if you think about that, Beit El, you're probably reading Bethel in your English, in your translation. The city was formerly called Luz. So they went out, they attacked a city called Luz. They renamed the city Baal. The spies saw a man coming out of the city and said to him, "Please show us the way to enter the city, and we will treat you kindly." So he showed them the way into the city, and they overpowered the city with the sword, but they let the man and all his family go free. Now, the United States military likes to say, I guess I should say the United States government likes to say that they taught the U.S. military to do this thing about changing hearts and minds. Okay, we're going to win the war by converting them over to be our friends. Okay, we're going to use propaganda and we're going to convince them to become our protectorates, not our enemies. Okay, as great of a tactic as that is, it saves many, many lives in a lot of situations. It ends a lot of conflicts with treaties and truces, and I'm glad for that, but they can't really take credit for that. Okay, the first time we have a recorded incident of it being done was actually in the book of Yehoshua. And then it carries over into the book of Shoftim. This is a Jewish Israelite tactic. And it comes down and it has been used over and over and over again by military bodies ever since. Now remember, they told the man they would let him and all his family go free. And they did. But they let the man and his family go free. He went into the land of Hittim, built a city and called it Luz, which is its name to this day. What does that say about humanity? I mean, we used to live and I ministered in a town called New Ross. You know what it was called, New Ross? Because so many of the original inhabitants came from a place called Ross. Why is it New Harmony? New Albany? Right? And how many times are cities founded by people who came from a city with the same name? We still do it today. We still do it today. Here was a man who saw the army of Elohim walk into his land, made a deal with them to save his own life, watched them wipe out everything that he knew, probably in a matter of a day from the sound of it. It didn't take him long. And what does he do? He says, that failed because this righteous Elohim of heaven let his people come in and destroy it. I want to build something just like it. Is that not what the world does today? Manasseh did not drive out the inhabitants of Beit Shan and its villages, Kenak and its villages, Dor and its villages, Gibeon and its villages, or Megiddo and its villages, so that the Canaanite managed to keep on living in that land. In time, when Israel had grown strong, they did put the Canaanites to forced labor, but failed to drive them out completely. Now, I used to think, what a failure on the part of Ben Yisrael to drive the people from the land. And I still say that because that's what Jehovah commanded that we do. But what was the prophecy made by Noah over Canaan? He said that Canaan and his descendants would be servants to his other descendants. The Canaanite, I'm saying that wrong, dwelt in the land for generations upon generations and prepared the land for the coming of Israel. Israel was told to drive them out of the land. And they should have. But instead, they did half the job and kept them for slaves. Now, in the Jewish mindset, when we take someone as a slave or a bondservant, the ultimate goal is that that person is going to eventually be grafted into Israel. That's the goal. But we do that one at a time, or one family at a time. They took the majority of the people of the land and tried to make them bondservants. And you know what's going to happen when you have that kind of basically a balance between freedmen and bondservants? You know what you're going to end up having? The bondservants are going to have a greater influence on the freedmen than the freedmen are going to have on the bondservants. This is the beginning of what theologians like to call, we call the cycle of apostasy. This is where it began. This is why Israel is doomed throughout this book to continually fall back into that cycle of apostasy. Because they had not driven out the influence that was going to lead them into it. Ephraim did not drive out the Canaanite living in Gezer, so the Canaanite continued living in Gezer along with them. Zebulun did not drive out the inhabitants of Kitron or Nahalal, so the Canaanite continued to live among them, but became subject to forced labor. Asher did not drive out the inhabitants of Akko, Zidon, Aklav, Oxim, Helba, Afik, or Rechal. So the Ashari lived among the Canaanite who were living in the land because they didn't drive them out. Think about that. We have tribes who didn't drive them out and had them as bondservants. We have tribes who didn't drive them out and just lived among them. And what does this one say? It doesn't say that the Canaanite lived among the Asheri. It says that the Asheri lived among the Canaanite. Think about that. That means they didn't even actually control the land. They didn't have them, the foreigners, as strangers among them. They were strangers among the foreigners. And they were destined to begin assimilating into that culture. Naphtali did not drive out the inhabitants of Beit Shemesh or Beit Anat, but lived among the Canaanite, living in the land. However, the inhabitants of Beit Shemesh and Beit Anat became forced labor for them. The Emori forced the people of Dan into the hills, for they would not let them come down to the valley. The Emori had resolved to live in the Harris Hills, in Ayalon, and in Shavlim. But when the power of Beit Yosef grew greater, they became subject to forced labor. So the territory of the Arami was from the scorpion ascent and the rock upward. Did you catch that? The people of Dan, the children of Dan, did not force out the people in the lands that were supposed to be there. They couldn't do it. The people refused to leave. And so the people of Dan went up and lived just up in the hills. And Beit Yosef came in and put the people that Dan could not drive out in under forced labor and became the occupiers of the land. The people of Dan, I won't say more than any other tribe, but more than any other tribe I've seen evidence of in study, have never really had a home. They've been wanderers, even the ones sitting in this room. When we choose not to honor what is told to us that we're to do, when we choose not to do what must be done in order for us to take possession of what's been promised to us, we set ourselves and our descendants up for great heartache. We were told as a nation we could have the land if we would just go in and take it. And if the rest of the tribes, I find it interesting, the rest of the tribes made no pact of mutual aid. Yehudah and Shimon, they fought for each other. The others fought for themselves. And if you notice, Yehudah and Shimon came out better than all the other tribes. All the other tribes either had the enemy or the foreigners at the very least living among them, had them as forced labor, or ended up living among the foreigners. I love doing research into Jewish genealogy, Israelite genealogy. I had the source book of Jewish genealogy I just had out the other day. It's laying back there on the table again, looking up somebody's heritage for them. And we talk a lot about who's of Dan and who's of Yehudah, and so might be a Levi, and we talk about all of this, and that's great. And for understanding priestly offices and kingly inheritance and things like that, it's important. But when it comes down to it, Yisraelim is the home for Yisrael. Not for Benjamin, not for Yehudah, not for Dan, not for Yosef. Yisraelim is the home for Yisrael. I mean, Jerusalem is the home for Israel. You know what I mean. Jerusalem is the home for Israel. And while I think I find it fascinating to be able to track down my lineage in Yehudah, my wife's lineage in Dan, and to follow these stories about my family roots going back to where they go back to, how the family name came about as almost a curse on us for being Jewish and refusing to convert. At the end of the day, the people who sit in this room who can't say that are still Israel. Okay, and if we don't stand together as a people, we'll stand apart and fail. When people talk about Abraham Lincoln and his United we stand, divided we fall speech, and it's come down through history as one of the great tenets of American culture. But long before that, it was a tenet of Hebrew culture. He took that from Scripture. team who wrote that knew from the history of our people what happens when the tribes are divided. You have a midrash. Yes?
Oh, I just think it's sad. It's just sad because you think that, you know, you want to say, well, why didn't they go in and do what they were supposed to do if they were promised that and give those victories? But at the same time, I could just see them, you know, they're up on a hill, different tribes, and they're looking down on these people and saying, we don't want to kill these people. You know, we don't want to drive them out. Why can't we just go with them? And that's the trap, you know, you can fall into today. But not to say that we're told to go out and drive people out of villages and towns and everything.
But why should we be separate?
Right, why should we be separate? Why should we, you know, and then I'm sure the people of the land, like the people of the land today say, you know, oh, you know, welcome, you know, and there's nothing wrong with welcome, but
you can be Jewish, but don't speak Hebrew.
Right, yeah, you know, you can come into our church and teach, just don't teach about this. Don't talk about this.
Don't open the first 39 books.
Yeah, I mean, is that any different?
No.
Everybody, he gives the revelation, he teaches, you know, it comes from the Spirit, but if you can't even talk about it, can't learn about it, you know. I'm going through a process in my life right now. Some of my friends, people I think are my friends, trying to figure out if they're one of the people I want to be friends with. Because sometimes it's just that those people are they just have blindness. Then sometimes it's not for some people. I believe it's blindness for a time. Some people I believe they just don't. Oh, you can be my friend. I'm talking about this. You can be my friend, but don't talk about that. Well, but then, I want you to hear what I have to say on my views on it. I don't want to hear your views. You know, I don't want to hear your beliefs. I just want you to hear mine. I have a friend like that.
You know,
we're not very good. That is good friends we used to, you know, because of it.
And probably everyone in this room except Ellie over there who's told about the experience that he had to go through that. Jacob has. Nothing you can through that. Okay. Lisa. A lot of the heartache that you've gone through the last year has been for exactly that reason. Because you learned the hard way that someone really wasn't concerned. Okay. Kaylee, we've had the bird and the fish talk out of it. The bird and the fish can be friends, but where are they going to play? You know, I mean, at some point, you have to acknowledge that you have two different natures. You know, we have the nature of Elohim. They don't.
Bird and that's not fish bowl, but bird can't go in the fish bowl.
Right.
You say hi, fish. How you doing? Fish say hi.
Right. And so long as the individual is open to the witness, we should continue trying to drive them out of the darkness. But when they say to us the words, you know, I'll be your friend, but don't talk to me about your God.
I don't even think it's drag. I think it's show them the way out. Be the light that they can find the way out. Because we can't do it for them. You know, we have to be the light.
You understand what
I
I'm
understand
saying?
what you're saying, yeah. But
We can stand in the doorway and hold out our hand and ask them to take it. But
they have to take it.
we have to stand in the light. And that's, sometimes it's very easy, unfortunately, to get sucked into the darkness. And Melech, you've lived far more years than me. I'm sure you've seen more of it than I have.
Devil right now. The enemy, really. But I would have been extremely nice to him. Even though I know when he said behind my back, really, really bad things. But I would have been friendly with him, helped me when I can. So, brought him vacation now. But he talked to me this weekend. Extremely nice. And he wants us to get together, get a six-pack of beer, and watch the park and fish. And so I said, well, I'll think about it. I said, no, I'm going to fish. But I'm not going to do that. But I trust him. He's the one that caused me so much problems doing my neighbors, my job, because of him. And so why should I do that? I mean, I can't see the point. I mean, I don't hate him.
But you don't want to set yourself up.
Right. Because I'm not a dude.
Right. What's his intentions behind it?
So,
And that's a tough decision sometimes because we have to. I mean, I think back to my first mentor in ministry was a man named Don Jones, and he showed me, and I saw him do it over and over and over again, and I adopted the principle, and I still believe in it. First, you make a friend, then you be a friend, then you need a friend. You know, you tell someone, yeah, I'll be your friend. And then when they need a friend and nobody else is there for them and you are, then they're going to wonder, what's different about that guy? Why is it that everybody else who said they were my friend abandoned me and he was there, or she was there, whatever the situation. And when they start asking questions, I don't understand, why was it you were there for me and nobody else was? He said, well, let me tell you what my God tells me I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to live. And it opens a door of witness. And I've used it, and I believe it works. And yet there comes a time when the person says, I don't ever want to hear about that anymore. And that's when Mashiach says we shake the dust of the place from our feet and we go on to the next place. And it's heartbreaking when you see someone do that. Now, I have non-believing, quote-unquote, friends who they say, you know, yeah, I'll listen. I'll tell you why I don't agree with you. And then, you know, we'll do whatever. Okay? And so long as they're willing to listen, even if they're not actively trying to listen, if they're just willing to let me speak the truth, I'm going to keep speaking it. Okay? And when they say, I'm not listening anymore, okay. And I walk away. And once in a while, whatever comes back around later and says, okay, you want to tell me more about that? Usually once they close that door, it's not up to me. And I've had to learn that the hard way. I can't stand at the door and be on it, you know? But if that person is willing to hear the truth, I'm going to keep planting, I'm going to keep watering, and hope and pray that I or somebody else gets to harvest it. Yes?
this guy is coming here very strange now. Like I said, I get extremely nice to always help me any way I can. Don't try not to bad mouth anyone who can say anything about it. Keep my mouth shut. And you know the funny thing is, he really likes me. I mean, he actually really likes me, and you would think that I was his best friend because he always comes and tells me everything he's doing, everything's going on. But yet at the same time, he's got a bad nose to me. I totally understand that because I could easily be a friend with him, but I just can't trust him because he's just done too much. But yet at the same time, you always want to be near him and around him, you know. I don't understand. If you hate me so bad, why are you always hanging after me and talking to me?
Somebody told me one time, Bryce Long. Most of you here know Bryce. Bryce is an interesting character. I do believe he's a believer. I don't doubt that for a second. He came out of a really, really bad, dark history and has an amazing testimony. He told me once, he said, Philip, you're like a light. I said, okay. He said, unfortunately for most people, you're a bug zapper. He said that they're drawn to the light, and then they get so close and they see what it really is to live for God, and you know, and I take that as a compliment. I think he was trying to tell me to tone it down a little bit, but I don't know that that's. I mean, if you're not shining bright, you're not going to attract anything. And if they don't want to become the light, then maybe it's that. You know, and it's unfortunate that it's one way or the other. But since he said that, I've looked a lot differently at people who walk away. Well, he has that. You know, and I don't know, he's drawn to you. From what you described, I've always thought that he's drawn to you. He sees something there that he knows is good. He just isn't ready to be part of the light. And maybe he just isn't ready yet. Maybe he's going to get that. You never know.
It's like many of the people that I work around, it's like they're attracted to me. They really like me. But they don't understand me. I'm really strange, you know, because I don't curse. I don't tell dirty jokes. I'm not involved in anything like that. I just do my job. I kind of work very hard to get out of everybody's way, and they just don't get it. They just don't get it.
You're a lighthouse. You're like a lighthouse.
I don't know about that.
You are. You're like a lighthouse.
But it's not me. It's because God in me is able to be kind to people even though they're not kind to me. You know what I mean? But I'm not perfect as I try to be.
It's like you're the lighthouse and all the people are at the ships in the yard. They're trying to come into the harbor and there's a big barrier reef. That's bad. You know, you're trying to warn them away from that. There's a storm and you're trying to do it.
You know, I never thought about the perfect analogy there. And it's a true story about the ship or the boat. They kept saying is a ship, you know, is like an aircraft carrier or something. Kept sending out a signal. You know, this is the U.S. such and such, USS such and such. You know, you need to get out here in our path. You need to get out of the way. And the person on the other end is like, I'm sorry, I can't comply. And it's like, no, you need to move. You know, this is a naval ship. Gotta get out of the way. So, sorry, I can't comply. And finally, after like the fifth time, the guy on the other side says, "This is a lighthouse. It's your call." You know, and I really feel like sometimes when we're dealing with the unsaved, and they're like, they're coming straight toward the light. And they're like, "But I want you to budge." And at some point, we have to say, "We are the lighthouse of Yehovah. It's your call." You know, you can run straight into him, or you can veer, or whatever you got to do. You can stop in your tracks in the water and take anchor. You got to make the decision. It's funny when you read that story, they never did tell you what the captain decided. They said when you read that story, it never does tell you what the captain decided. You just keep telling them to move, or
maybe you call the Coast Guard and say, "Is this for real? Is there a lighthouse up there?"
all right. Yes.
Do you remember, I mean, a few years ago, they picked up this message that was sent out in 1940 during the war. It's been floating around out there somewhere all the time. I find that interesting. But anytime we speak or anyone, you know, it comes out, I guess on and on and on and on